Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, investors may still be assessing the impact of the first encounter between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. The two presidential candidates spent 90 minutes in Philadelphia sparring over abortion rights, January 6th, and the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. But the ABC News presidential debate began with the economy. Vice President Harris touted her plan for a $50,000 small business tax deduction.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month.
Vice President Harris's comment on tariffs had former President Trump on the defensive.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
And the candidates also clashed on abortion rights. The vice president said the end of Roe v. Wade has led to what she calls Trump abortion bans across the country.
If Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages.
Donald Trump said he has not read Project 2025. When asked if he would veto a national abortion ban, he said he wouldn't have to.
As far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris also sparred over foreign policy. The vice president said the former president would end the war in Ukraine quickly by giving Vladimir Putin what he wants.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine.
And later in the debate, when the focus turned to immigration, Trump floated a conspiracy theory about migrants in Ohio.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
And that claim on the ABC News presidential debate earned one of several fact checks from moderated David Muir.
Well, Karen, there is plenty of reaction pouring in this morning to the debate. We spoke with Bloomberg political contributors Jeannie Sheehan-Zaino and Rick Davis.
I would say most of the moments, sort of following from this debate were how strong Kamala Harris was on national security. She used Donald Trump's own former cabinet members as a wedge to show his weakness in this category, which I thought was an interesting turnabout. And Donald Trump, unwillingness to say that he would veto a national abortion ban, which we have not seen up until this point in time.
One thing that will define this debate will be him talking about illegal immigrants eating pets. But that's what he went to as opposed to where his team wanted him to go. Issues, economy, immigration, and the idea that she's in office right now, she could be doing all these things.
Bloomberg political contributors Jeannie Sheehan-Zaino and Rick Davis spoke during our special debate coverage last night on Bloomberg Radio and television.
Well, Nathan, minutes after the debate concluded, Harris picked up a key endorsement from a pop icon. And we get that story from Bloomberg's Kimberly Adams.
The endorsement comes from one of the music industry's biggest stars, Taylor Swift. In an Instagram post, Swift wrote, "I think she is a steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we are led by calm and not chaos." Swift included a picture of herself holding a cat and signed the message, "Childless Cat Lady," a reference to comments made by J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate. Swift has a dedicated following among young women, a key demographic in the November election. Trump was asked about Swift's backing.
What is your reaction to Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris?
I have no idea.
Harris's deputy campaign manager said the endorsement, quote, means a lot to us. Kimberly Adams, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Kimberly, thank you. And we are going to get much more reaction to the presidential debate in a few minutes when we bring you a special political roundtable. But let's turn back to the markets now. We are watching futures fall ahead of another key reading on inflation. At 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time, we get the August reading on consumer prices. The median forecast is for a gain of 0.2%. And we get a preview from Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
Unless there's a major surprise, the August CPI report won't tell investors or central bankers anything new, and that's a good thing. Forecasts are for little change in the slow trend of slowing inflation. And that's what the Fed wants to see in order to remain on track for a rate cut next week. Policymakers meet on the 18th. Helped by falling food and gasoline prices, headline CPI is expected to fall on a year-over-year basis, while core inflation is forecast unchanged. But that would be good enough. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, Mike, thanks. And ahead of the CPI report, two-year Treasury yields have fallen to their lowest level since 2022.
Well, Nathan, Warren Buffett continues to sell shares of Bank of America. A regulatory filing shows Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway reaped $229 million over 3 days of selling through yesterday. The average price fetched on Tuesday, $39.30 a share, was among the lowest reported since he began whittling the stake. That's a significant slowdown from the 8 prior rounds in which his conglomerate generated an average of about $870 million each time, based on filings that typically span 3 days of trading. Berkshire still holds just over 11% of the bank's stock.
We're watching shares of GameStop this morning, Karen. They are down 10.5% in early trading. The video game retailer reported a fourth consecutive quarter of falling sales, though it did also report an unexpected profit. GameStop shares continue to be buffeted largely by the meme stock trading community. Back in June, the company raised more than $2 billion after stock influencer Keith Gill, known as Roaring Kitty, returned to YouTube, inspiring a stock rally. GameStop has a market cap of about $10 billion.
In other news this morning, Nathan, today marks the 23rd anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attack. We're joined by Bloomberg's Lisa Mateo in New York. Lisa.
Hey, Karen. Today, the nation pays tribute to those who lost their lives in the worst terror attack in U.S. history. Now, the National September 11th Memorial and Museum will host its annual ceremony at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time in Lower Manhattan, honoring the 2,983 men, women, and children that were killed in the 2001 attacks at the World Trade Center site, the Pentagon, aboard Flight 93, as well as those who died in the February 26, 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Now, it will include a reading of the victims' names, as well as 6 moments of silence, recognizing when both World Trade Center towers were struck and fell, when the Pentagon was attacked, and when Flight 93 crashed. Memorial Plaza will only be open to family members of the victims. Both President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are expected to attend. In New York, Lisa Mateo, Bloomberg Radio.
It's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's John Tucker. John, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. Hurricane Francine gains strength. It's expected to make landfall in Louisiana today after causing some offshore oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico to be shuttered. Michelle Borg is with Entergy, the major power supplier for the region.
All eyes are on the Gulf right now, and we're actively monitoring the track and the projected intensity of the storm as it makes its way over to the Louisiana coast.
On its current track, Francine could graze Morgan City with impacts from its winds extending as far east as New Orleans. Winds were about 90 miles an hour. U.S. aviation authorities will investigate a ground collision between 2 Delta airline passenger jets in Atlanta. That story from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter.
The larger plane was carrying 221 passengers and was headed to Asia. The smaller, carrying 56, for a regional carrier operated by Delta. The first reports are that the larger Airbus SEA 350 clipped the smaller plane. The pilot radioed the tower for clarification.
We just hit something on the taxiway. Could you tell us what it was?
No injuries. Passengers were put on different flights. The FAA will investigate. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo talked to reporters after he testified before a House subcommittee on his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. He took aim at Donald Trump.
I took responsibility every day. Unlike the president, who literally said, I take no responsibility.
The committee criticized his policy in 2020 to readmit nursing home patients after they contracted COVID. A cybersecurity expert cautioning automakers should do more to increase the safety of vehicles whose software can be updated over the air. Liz James, a consultant at IT security firm NCC Group, says current technology leaves cars vulnerable to being manipulated without an owner's knowledge. Global news 24 hours a day. And whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now, I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Karen.
All right, John, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. 2.5 weeks left for the baseball regular season. Yankees almost certain to make the postseason. Mets hope to be there, too. Last night, both New York teams lost, and the teams they want to lose all won. For the Yankees, a 5-0 loss at the stadium to Kansas City. Seth Lugo, the longtime Mets reliever, continued his sensational season as a Royals starter. Lugo pitched 7 innings, allowed only 3 singles, no walks, 10 strikeouts. He impressed Aaron Boone.
That was probably, as good a performance against us this year. We were silent, and I think he was ahead in the count. Looked like he was really dotting his location-wise with a big mix. It's 2 fastballs, it's cutter, it's slider, it's curveball, it's change, and vary the speeds on all of those.
Lugo making a strong case to be the AL Cy Young winner. He's won 16 games, his ERA under 3. Baltimore won 5-3 at Boston. The Yankee lead over the Orioles back to being just a half game. Mets lost in Toronto 6-2. The ex-Met Chris Bassett beat David Peterson, who came in 9-1. He gave up as many runs in the first 3 innings last night as he had allowed in the first 3 of his combined previous 11 starts. Atlanta, San Diego, and Arizona all won. The Braves 12-0 at Washington. The Mets and Braves are tied for the last wild card spot. A golf sit-down held yesterday in New York will continue today. Tiger Woods among those representing the PGA Tour in a meeting with Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. The two sides still trying to iron out a deal 15 months after the shocking announcement that they will do business together. Another meeting held in New York. NBA Board of Governors and Commissioner Adam Silver emerged, saying that now that there's labor peace and a new media deal, expansion is now being discussed, with Seattle and Las Vegas being mentioned most often as sites for new teams. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen, Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. Shares of Donald Trump's media company, Trump Media and Technology, are the biggest laggards in early trading, down nearly 17% this morning after an ABC News presidential debate that saw the former president meet Vice President Kamala Harris for the first time and find himself on the defensive over 90 minutes on issues ranging from the economy and immigration to foreign policy and abortion rights. On this morning after the debate, we are very pleased to bring you a roundtable discussion with Jennifer Lawless, the chair of the politics department at the University of Virginia, and we are joined as well by Terry Haynes, the founder of Pangea Policy. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for so much for being with us. And if this debate were about defining the other candidate, we did see Kamala Harris do that at a number of points against Donald Trump, including this moment. Listen.
His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term.
Jennifer Lawless of UVA, I want to get your reaction first to what we heard over the 90 minutes last night. Good morning.
Good morning. I think Kamala Harris performed as well as anybody could have expected and as well as Democrats could have hoped. She kept Donald Trump on the defensive on both domestic policy and foreign policy almost the entire debate. And if her goal was to get under his skin, she did it. So she was able to basically set the agenda when it came to topics, when it came to issues, and very rarely did he fact check her or correct anything she said. So I think it was a big win for Harris. Trump, on the other hand, demonstrated that he was quite frazzled and quite unable to articulate a clear vision for moving forward.
Your reaction as well, Terry. Did Kamala Harris perform as well as expected, or did she outperform? Did she need to outperform last night?
Good morning, Nathan. I think that Harris very clearly won the debate because she did what she needed to do, passing and exceeding passing the fundamental threshold credibility test on fitness to lead the country. I think she helped herself as much as she could. She was also helped by Trump's performance, which I think was combative and shouty. she showed a lot of command of the issues, the passion, the ability to place herself on a higher moral plane. I thought that was all very good. She prosecuted the case very well. Finally, I'd note for markets, there's no policy clarity, but none should have been expected. I continue to caution against a Harris trade and the idea that there's some sort of one-party wave building. What you're going to end up with in Washington very likely is a continued politically split Washington that's going to blunt a lot of the concerns about what Harris's agenda might be.
We did hear a lot of discussion about policy, though, including the idea that former President Trump's tariff plans would be taxes on Americans. She also defended her own policies of trying to bring tax breaks to small businesses. Jennifer, did those points stick for Harris?
I think that for people that were looking for details about policy, the child care tax credit she mentioned, the small business tax credit that she mentioned, concerns over Donald Trump's tariffs were somewhat sufficient. She at least gave some examples, but last night was not a master class in economic policy or any particular policy for that, for that point. So, I think people that were looking for policy details found them, but generally it was an opportunity to demonstrate the character and the stature of both candidates.
Going into this debate, Terry, we had heard that, or we had some thought perhaps that Vice President Harris was going to be under some pressure to explain some of her shifts in policy when it comes to fracking and immigration. But we also heard former President Trump asked about some of his shifts in policy, including on whether he would push to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Let's listen to a bit of that.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that.
Does the former president, Terry, need to answer more for some of his own policy proposals, what he would do specifically as president?
Well, Harris had a kind of a perfect storm in a positive sense. The social issues are very much to her advantage. Firstly, secondly, she could talk about social issues, including health care and abortion, by touting achievements from her administration and the previous administration. And thirdly, she could use it to take advantage of Trump's kind of muddled responses, which had been apparent even before the debate, on what he would do about the Affordable Care Act, if anything, always a hot-button issue for hardcore Republicans, as well as the shifting positions back and forth on abortion. So I thought she did a very good job of crowding Trump on what was perceived to be an issues advantage for Trump. And by doing so, frankly, bolstered her own credibility, which was the point of the evening.
We're speaking with Terry Haynes, the founder of Pangea Policy, along with Jennifer Lawless, chair of the politics department at the University of Virginia. Jennifer, to get back to the idea of defining the other candidate, at one point we heard former President Trump flat out call Kamala Harris a Marxist. Does that kind of argument stick with Kamala Harris?
It doesn't, for a few reasons. The first is it's so hyperbolic that it's difficult to imagine that Americans will believe it. Second, many don't know what that even means. And third, later on in the debate, when he was talking about her flip-flopping policies, several of them were flip-flops that he would consider more toward the middle and more toward moderation. So he did try to say something like she's going to try to perceive herself, she's going to get you to perceive her as a moderate, and then she'll change when she's in office. But she has a record as AG, as senator, as vice president to quell those concerns among voters. So I think it was a talking point. I think it was something that Donald Trump thought would be cute, and I don't think it stuck.
What about you, Terry? And I wonder whether you think some of the answers that Kamala Harris gave, the calm demeanor that she put out there, perhaps compared to some of the more stridency of former President Trump, might come off as maybe over-scripted. Is there a risk of that for Kamala Harris?
I think the punditocracy out there makes entirely too much of that. The reason why I say that is, they have been, you have been, Professor Lawless has been, I have been listening to all these statements, all these speeches, turning them over every day. The vast majority of the American public hasn't. And there were well over 100 million people watching and listening last night by going by polling about who was going to watch. And, so they were hearing all that for the first time. So I don't really think there's a problem with it being canned. What I got out of Harris was really three things. First of all, she effectively positioned herself as the candidate of the future versus the past, and Trump helped her. That split screen was particularly striking in terms of the future versus the past, the generational contrast. Finally, I think that the rhetorical contrast was also huge. It was one of hearing kind of fresher, yet familiar music from Harris versus, hearing the same old oldies channel and from Trump. And the hyperbole doesn't serve well if it doesn't seem credible. And I certainly don't think the vast majority of voters will see it as credible with Harris.
On the point of the hyperbole, Jennifer, I think a moment that probably got a lot of viewers' attention last night was this unfounded conspiracy theory that the former president brought up in a discussion on immigration about migrants in Springfield, Ohio, eating people's pets. Is this going to be one of those moments that gets replayed on campaign ads all the way into November?
I think it is for a couple of reasons. The first is that following the debate, J.D. Vance in the spin room actually doubled down on that claim and said that people are calling his Senate office with those concerns, despite the fact that it's obviously been debunked. And second, it's one of these things that the split screen really highlighted in terms of what the presidency would look like if you had more of what Kamala Harris calls chaos from Donald Trump or a vision for the future from Kamala Harris. So I think that kind of statement just generally embodies the fact that Donald Trump is willing to say anything. He's willing to put forward any conspiracy theory or any lie, and he's willing to double down. He did that with the Central Park 5 line as well last night, which was just appalling.
And after the debate, Terry, we actually saw former President Trump make the rare step of going into the spin room to talk with reporters, to talk with Fox News host Sean Hannity, and to complain about the moderators, saying it was 3 against 1 for him. What of that? Was there sort of a gang up on former President Trump? Can he defend that?
Well, it's if your lead problem is that you're concerned that the refs were gaming you, you're losing. If you're out there spinning personally, I think you're also losing. And this is by now for Trump. If I can piggyback on Professor Lawless' remarks, this is a pet issue for him. And thank you for laughing at my joke.
Wow.
And but that is something that the Professor Lawless's point, that is something that's going to resonate from now till the election. I have only to point to the Drudge Report this morning, which leads with a picture of Trump with a cat sitting on his lap and a bunch of animals with the headline "The End," subbed the night Trump lost it all. You're going to hear about that from that debunked claim from now until November on 2 levels. One is the debunked claim, and secondly, by the way, that he talked about it repeatedly as Springfield, Illinois. And this is going to be used as by the Harris campaign, again, generationally, to say, a la Biden, poor old Trump, he's past it.
And after the debate, we saw a picture of a cat being held by Taylor Swift in an endorsement on Instagram for Kamala Harris. Jennifer, what's going to be the bigger deal as we head to November, this debate or the Taylor Swift endorsement?
I think they both matter for different reasons to different people. Taylor Swift has millions and millions of followers who are not at all interested in politics, but are very interested in doing whatever Taylor Swift tells them to do. So the get out the vote potential of a Taylor Swift endorsement is huge for the Harris campaign. But Donald Trump coming undone and the memes and the ads that we can expect over the course of the next 8 weeks are going to be very helpful to the Harris campaign as well.
Just 20 seconds left. I'll leave you with the last word, Terry. Do you think there's going to be another debate after this one? And what about the Taylor Swift endorsement?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised about another debate, but I think Harris would be foolish to do it, frankly. She's gotten everything from the format she needs to do. Finally, what you've got is the summer of Brett followed by the fall of the Swifties. And I think that's going to be a part of a renewed Harris momentum and a long-term move towards her by undecided voters.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.